Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. Pleased to be joined by Matt Goldman. If you might know him, if you follow the college scene, you will. Of course, he's a student broadcaster at the Ohio State University. How's it going?
I'm doing well, Casey. Thanks for having me on, and I'm glad you were able to do the Ohio State. That's how you got to say it these days.
Yeah. So what is it? Just let's kind of talk about this. What have you, before we get into your career, let's talk about what you've been up to these past few weeks.
Yeah, so I've been home on winter break for school's been off. I've been home since December 10th, back in New Jersey, in Westfield, New Jersey, a small town in North New Jersey, near New York City, and just been hanging out with my family, watching my Giants get to the playoffs, seeing a Knicks game or two. Watched a lot of Ohio State and hung out with friends, but it's been good to be able to relax and kind of get away from all the drama and a lot of the work and broadcasting that I've been doing.
Yeah. So kind of talk about just how you wanted to do this and just how you got into it.
Yeah, so it's all started in high school. When I was a sophomore, wasn't the greatest athlete in high school. I was on the lacrosse team. That was my sport. If I had to, that was my sport, and I played golf on the side a little and was on the shot put team, but I'm not a shot putter. My body frame's not for shot put, and I've grown up an Ohio State fan, big sports fan all my life, and I was pretty knowledgeable in sports when I think of that, and that I kind of didn't stop talking about sports always. So my lacrosse career ended with a knee surgery, and I kind of need to find my path of what I want to do. And I didn't really want to get into just general business, or I wasn't the science or math guy. I just love sports and want to be in that when I'm older. So I thought to myself, well, why don't I do something with talking about sports? So um, I found our student TV station in high school, met with a couple people, kind of learned the ins and outs of broadcasting at the bare minimum of just when to talk, when not to talk. But I kind of self-taught on my own in high school, where I'd watch your Joe Bucks, your Jim Nance's, Al Michaels, uh, kind of just do their job really well, and that's how I got into it. And I knew I wanted to do that as soon as I graduated high school and chose Ohio State, and no better place to be than Ohio State when it comes to athletics.
Yeah. So kind of talk about just some of the stuff that you've been able to do.
So this past week I was just in Atlanta for the college football playoff semifinal. That was a whirlwind of a weekend. It was awesome. I was battling a stomach virus at the same time, so that was hard to juggle just due to the fact that I'm a broadcaster. So my energy, I always have to have a pretty good energy. But if my stomach's not well, then it's obviously not gonna. It's hard to do, but I had a great team with me for Scarlet Gray Sports Radio. We got to go to media days, met some players, press conferences. I got to appear on the Paul Feinbaum show on SEC Network. I was a guest on there, so that was seen by a lot of people on television. A lot of people from my hometown and college got to see me and sent me a lot of nice notes, and that was really cool just to be on the set. And Paul was such a nice guy, and he's just so immensely talented with everything he does in the college football world. And then it came to game day, and I had the pleasure to be the play-by-play for a quarter of the game, where we all split, my crew and I, each quarter, Tyler, Cole, and Caleb. And we called a historic game, is how I'll put it. It wasn't the Ohio State way and the way I wish the end was, and I'm sure you saw it, Casey, but it was a great finish for college football, not a great finish for Ohio State.
Yeah. So let's talk about, what's next for you, bud. I mean, for the rest of the year, what have you got planned?
So get back to Columbus in 5 days from now, from when this is being recorded. I'll be on television on Big Ten Network on Sunday doing the women's basketball, Ohio State versus Illinois. And Ohio State, I mean, they're hot right now. They're number 3 in the nation. So women's basketball needs to get more praise out there. They're fun to watch, and especially fun to broadcast, because they're a great group of women who are killing it out there. Great coaching staff with Coach McGuff and the rest of them. They're very friendly towards us, and especially me. I've gotten to know them over the last year and a half. And then I have a lot of radio games coming up as well. with Scarlet and Gray calling a lot of the men's basketball games, and Ohio State versus Iowa for women's basketball is a game I've scheduled already because that's a top 10 matchup. Caitlin Clark coming to Columbus. You love to see that coming. And then as the seasons move on and the months go on, I got lacrosse coming up a lot on Big Ten Network, which I'll be doing, which I'm a lacrosse guy, as I mentioned. So Ohio State's got some pretty good lacrosse. So I'm looking forward to that. And I was their beat reporter last year, so I know the team well. And then I'm also doing a lot more. I'm gonna hope to do some men's volleyball on television this year, and then softball is a team I'm looking forward to, just because their team is really exciting in Ohio State. They hit a lot of bombs. It's a small field compared to baseball, so makes for a lot of good home run calls, Casey.
What is the hardest sport to call in your opinion?
Mm. So I've never done hockey, and I'm gonna say hockey just for the people that have done it, because when you listen to some of the greats, Doc Emmerich out there, and some of the other greats, Bob Wischusen does a great job, and Sean McDonough, it is so difficult to gotta memorize all those names, the line changes, just everything going on. The movement's so quick, so you have to fill all that airtime with just different verbiage of ways that a puck is hit or bodies are slamming or stuff going on. So I would say that's the hardest sport to call from what I've seen. But hardest sport for me to call personally that I've done, I'm gonna have to say softball just because of the pace of the sport. And I think a lot of people would say that about baseball and softballs. It's a conversational sport, especially broadcasting, where it's not something that you can just describe every detail because everyone's seen that already, especially on television. You need to come up with a lot of airtime, a lot of prep for in order to give your listeners or viewers more details about a certain player, a certain team, a certain coach. And that's what makes the broadcast so difficult because I love the challenge, but at the same time, it is not easy coming up with all that prep because at the end of the day, there's so much you can talk about a player without giving the viewer too much, like too much information. You don't want to make them throw up all the information about Sam Hackenbrack for Ohio State softball. She's the DH where you can't give her entire high school rundown. You might give her one or two things.
Yeah. So let's so where so what year are you in college?
So I'm a junior right now in college.
So I know you probably have thought about this, but where's your like end game with all that? Like what like specifically do you want to do? I always like to ask people this.
Totally, totally. And that's a big question right there, just because there's so many different routes I can possibly go down. And I think this time next year is I'll have a better answer of where I'm gonna be within a year from now, because that's scary, a job out of college. But this past summer I was a Sirius XM intern for PJ Radio, and I did like that side of the professional sports world. And but golf is not for me. And at the same time, also the radio is not for me as much. Not saying I don't want to do radio. It's the slow pace of radio is I prefer television. So I hope to my end goal is to be a play-by-play broadcaster for a major network, calling football and basketball, and that's the goal. Or possibly being the voice of an NFL team like the Giants. That's the team I've grown up watching, team I loved, and thankfully I've seen two Super Bowls because we know they've had a miserable last couple of years, and it's been a long time. But a guy I look up to is Adam Amin. He is one of the pivotal guys in this industry that I've grown to have a nice relationship with where we text sometimes back and forth about life. And he was doing the Giants game a couple of weeks ago and sent me his spotting charts, and I was able to see what a professional does. And it made me think like, all right, I want to be in his exact place when I'm older. Like there is no sport that I don't like. I need to be in football. That's what I told myself. And I hope to somehow be a voice or to add to football, whether that's a studio, sideline reporter, or play-by-play.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. It also led me into the next question.
totally.
Where do you want, like, who have you met?
Mm. I've met a lot of people. I've not met Amamine, but I've talked on the phone, so I'll put him in there. Jason Ross, who's a Big Ten Network guy, he's one of the rising stars in broadcasting. He's become a good friend. Met Jay Billis through a Zoom call through Sirius XM PGA, so that was funny when he called into the show. Paul Feinbaum, so that was pretty exciting. I don't want to say I've met all the Ohio State football players and coaches because I've gotten to know them over the season now, and all the basketball players too. But I guess a lot of people look at Ryan Day as someone like to meet, or Marvin Harrison Jr. to meet. So I'll put them in there, and CJ Stroud as well. Um, Met Joshua Perry. Trying to think of other big time people I've met, but Gene Smith, he's the Ohio State athletic director. I'm
Yep.
not sure. Put him in there. Gus Johnson. Gus Johnson. That was a really fun one. He's how could I not mention him? Gus Johnson's he's a fun character that
Yes,
I would.
I've met him a couple times.
Oh
It's
my God, Casey. I
been
mean, what is your fondest memory of him?
oh my there's too many. I can't say it on the air.
Yeah,
Um,
no, he comes behind us like we're in Ohio Stadium. We're our student radio. We're not a booth. We're technically outside at a table, but we're right next to the broadcast booth. So like he appears during halftime at the table and like comes up behind us and we just hear a voice and we're like, wait, what? And then it's like, oh, it's Gus. We're like so confused. And he's a really nice dude who is really friendly towards us and treats us well. And I was in at Madison Square Garden calling the Ohio State UNC game a couple weeks ago for basketball and met Roy Williams. So one of the greats right there. That was exciting. But this industry allows you to meet a lot of cool people. And my advice would be don't be afraid. These people love talking to young, inspiring journalists out there because they were once those people. So they want to give back just as much as you want to talk to them. And this is something I've heard. Brian Dable said this one time, the Giants head coach, and this kind of stuck with me. And that's kind of my philosophy for going up to people that are big time. I'll put them in quotes. Is you in your mind, that's the most important person in that moment to you, and they need to treat you that way. So they might be thinking, this person's so nervous to talk to me. I'm gonna give them a little bit of your time. So like that's how I think like people treat us and like as aspiring journalists, like that's how we roll. So hoping one day that we're in that position ourselves and able to give back and look at people and try and help them out and give them any advice. And like the way Adam Amin sent me a spot charts, like that's why I hope to send to a kid 20 years from now that's looking to get into possibly calling games on NFL and Fox like I'm trying. Yeah.
all right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us, and best of luck in the this season. And we'll definitely have you on again sometime.
Thank you, Casey. I'm excited. Thanks for having me and looking forward to it again.